All right, good afternoon. I'd like to call to order this meeting, the Santa Barbara County Local Agency Formation Commission for Thursday, September 5th. Madam Clerk, can I get a roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Savis.
Here.
Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Commissioner Freeman. Here. Commissioner Geyer.
Here.
Commissioner Hartman.
Here.
Commissioner Lavanino.
Here.
Commissioner Sierra.
Here.
Commissioner Stark.
Here.
Commissioner Waterfield.
Here.
Commissioner Welt. And Commissioner Williams.
Here.
Let the record reflect Commissioner Welt is absent, and Commissioner Stark will be our voting member for today, as well as we have our voting member, Commissioner Waterfield in Santa Maria, so we'll do roll call votes.
Okay, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes for July 11th?
I'll make the motion. I'll second it.
Motion moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Savis.
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman. Commissioner Geyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman. Commissioner Stark. Commissioner Waterfield.
Aye.
Chair Lavanino.
Aye.
Motion passes 6 with 1 abstention.
Very good. All right. Well, we have a momentous occasion today. We are swearing in our newest member, Jay Freeman, who's going to handle the festivities. Jacqueline, you want to take it over?
Yes, Chair Lavanino, members of the board, if Commissioner Freeman can please join me at the podium and we'll swear him in. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name, do solemnly swear
I, Jay Freeman, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
that I will bear true faith and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties upon which
the duties upon which
I am about to enter.
I'm about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, very good. So since we're getting ready to go into public comment, Jay, if you'd like to lead off with public comment, just kind of give us introduce yourself to folks that might not know you.
Do I have to push this button, by the way?
No. Oh, well, you have a... Wait, flip it the other way, where the light's on. There you go. Okay, you don't have to hold it down.
Okay.
Breaker 19.
Thank you. So my name is Jay Freeman, and I'm on the board of the Isla Vista Community Services District. I attended the University of California, Santa Barbara's computer science program, well, College of Creative Studies program with an emphasis in computer science, and I never left. So I've been a resident of Santa Barbara County now since 1999, living in an area that eventually became Goleta for most of that time until I ended up moving into Isla Vista. And I am very excited to be on LAFCO. I've been attending meetings of LAFCO on and off for the last 4 years, I believe. So,
Very good. Well, welcome aboard. Supervisor Hartman?
I just had a question for Mr. Hood. So we now have our full complement of LAFCO board members, is that correct?
That's correct. First time in some time, since the election a year and a half, 2 years ago. We have a full complement. We have 11 commissioners.
Commissioner Williams?
Well, usually politicians go on too long, but in this case, because he didn't give himself enough credit, I feel I have to intervene. Jay's been a real prominent business owner in Isla Vista, and also, which he alluded to, also was really instrumental in the conversation about the formation of a CSD and future local governance. And so, I think he could honestly say he's been one of the most active people in the community the last few years, and really appreciated that participation.
Very good. All right, so we will move on to public comment. Do we have any requests to speak?
Chair Levanino and members of the commission, I have no request to speak on general public comment today.
And nobody in Santa Maria? Okay, sounds good. We will move on to our consent calendar. Are there any items that the public has wished to pull from the consent calendar, or any items that members of the commission would like to pull?
Chair Levanino and members of the commission, I have no requests to speak on the consent calendar for today.
All right, do I have a motion to move the consent calendar?
So moved.
Okay, Commissioner Guyer seconds. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Aceves,
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman,
Aye.
Commissioner Guyer,
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman, Commissioner Stark,
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield,
Aye.
Chair Levanino.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimous.
Very good. That moves us to our out-of-agency service agreements. Item 1, please.
Chair Levanino and members of the commission, out-of-agency service agreement, item number 1 is to consider recommendations regarding LAFCO file number 19-5 for an out-of-agency service agreement for the San Ynez Community Service District to provide wastewater collection services to 2401 Wannon Way, Solvang, California, 93463.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Hood, LAFCO Executive Officer. This proposal for an out-of-agency service agreement may seem familiar because we've had several of these in the past few months. At the July 11th meeting, we had one that was approved by the chairman based on a health and safety issue that was on the same, on Jannon Way as well. And then we also had an application for an annexation on, I think it was, what was it, Sierra Way, I believe. That was an annexation. So I'll give you some more history on this and where we're headed with this Jannon Acres area. But you'll be happy to know that I don't have any PowerPoints today compared to the last meeting where we had 4 to 5 PowerPoints. So small thanks for that. So we have an existing health and safety problem with a failing septic tank. The Environmental Health Services Department of the county has issued a letter saying that they should, the property owners, Mr. and Mrs. Linda, should abandon the septic tank as soon as possible and connect to the San Ynez Community Services District collection system, which is in the highway right next to the area. So without much more ado on that, I know Mr. Linda is in the audience, happy to answer any questions that you may have, but I don't think we really need to go into, unless you have questions of staff, any great amount of discussion on this. It's unusual because it's not an annexation, and it's in the sphere of influence of the city of Solvang. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on the agenda because I did meet with the city staff and the mayor of Solvang and the president of the San Ynez CSD about these areas that are out of the sphere of influence of the area of the agency that could provide services if it had the ability to do so. But with that, I will conclude my comments and recommend that you approve this out-of-agency service agreement. Firstly, on page 3 of the staff report, that you find that the categorical exemption class 1 and 3 is satisfactory for the out-of-agency service agreement. The lead agency was the San Ynez CSD. We'll also provide a filing of this with the clerk's office. And the recommendations are also contained in on page 3, A through E. And I also have a revised agreement, out-of-agency service agreement that we handed out today. And legal counsel and myself discussed this because the one I used was the one that we had the chairman sign last meeting. So this is subject to commission approval And so the votes will be determined on the out-of-agency service agreement. Be happy to answer any questions. I see some puzzled faces, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I do have a puzzled face.
Lights are all lit up. We'll go start with Commissioner Stark.
I noticed that the option for our action contains a requirement that the landowner agrees to future annexation. Is that?
That's correct.
Is that still in there?
It will be a signed agreement that the landowner, if there is an annexation, at this point, it's not in the sphere of influence of Solvang, but if the sphere of influence is changed, that they will not protest any future annexation to the Santa Ynez CSD.
And I noticed a person who I believe is the landowner nodding his head in a generally vertical direction, which
Right,
would
he
indicate
signed the
assent.
agreement, yeah.
So that's still in there?
That's still in there.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it is a special problems area, and the city of Solvang is very much in support of this. So I am as well. I just was wondering if you could expand a bit more on what you see for the future. I don't see that on our agenda, the municipal service review sphere of influence update. So
Right.
could you elaborate?
Yes, about 3 weeks ago, I had a meeting with, as I briefly alluded to, with the city manager and the mayor and councilman from Solvang, planning director of Solvang, and the president of the Santa Ynez CSD and the general manager. And the discussion centered around, and public works director from Solvang, centered around changing the sphere of influence from the city of Solvang to the Santa Ynez CSD. It's the Santa Ynez CSD uses the city of Solvang's treatment plant, but they also have a collection line that runs down the highway next to the Jannon Acres area. And I went out and looked, viewed the area, and there is since it's a special problems area, the city of Solvang is supportive at this point, pending public comment, of course, having some outreach, public hearings, maybe joint meetings between Santa Ynez and the city of Solvang of amending the sphere of influence through a municipal service review process that would be filed with LAFCO. And they would be paying equal amount of the LAFCO application fees. We did do a sphere of influence update for the city of Solvang. We haven't done one recently for the Santa Ynez CSD because we had some issues, as you recall, with Los Olivos CSD, and that was kind of put on the back burner. We never did get back to that. But this is one area that I was supportive of changing, and with the agreement of both agencies, the city and the district, and of course the property owners, they may like being in Solvang's sphere of influence, who knows, but with some failing septic tanks, environmental health services was also at the meeting in Solvang and is very supportive of getting this whole area annexed to the Santa Ynez CSD and eliminating the special problems area voluntarily when the property owners need to get connected to the system, that they would be allowed to do that. Lacking that, there would be a need for an advanced septic system, which in Los Olivos was expensive, 30 to 40,000 per parcel. And we had the Tate annexation last meeting. And also, this is kind of an aside, but the neighbors are now wanting to be annexed to the Santa Ynez CSD, and there's an application that's pending for them being included with the sewer system.
So, two-part question. Do you know anything about the timing of this and what LAFCO's role would be? Does this really come from Solvang and the CSD, or?
Yeah, I think it's, I would be supportive, as I was when I volunteered to attend the meeting a few weeks ago. And it's really something that I would like to see the district and the city, outreach. And they had agreed to do that. We discussed how that could be done. But I would, be happy to attend any public meetings, any meetings that would facilitate this process, because I think it's a good process.
Commissioner Seves.
Thank you. Just confirming, this property is in the same area that we had from last month? Are they adjoining? Are they close?
They are very close. The one that the chairman signed last month is on the same street.
2401 was the one that was approved.
2401, and this is 2501.
2401 and 2501.
Can you go ahead and come up to the microphone so that we get all that on the record? I'm not sure Santa Maria can hear you. So can you give us the address from you?
Yes, hi, Wendy from San Ynez Community Services District. Last month, we had 2501 Janin Way come before you to be approved for out of agency, and this gentleman's property is 2401 Janin Way, and there are 3 houses in between.
Cool. Okay. Thanks.
And my second question is what triggers the inspection from the county's public health on the septic tanks? Is this an annual thing, or is this when something is not working right, or what triggers that?
You know, I'm sure that they, have a contact from the property owner, and usually if there's a failing septic tank, I ask them politely to contact Environmental Health Services, but they are very familiar with this entire area, and in fact, the Environmental Health Services Director called me and asked to be included in the meeting in Solvang because this is a special problems area that they would like to see connected. And there are cases when there are failing septic tanks that it makes it unreasonable to continue using those septic tanks. And probably the other option would be to, not live there until the new septic is installed or they connect to the San Ynez CSD if they're adjacent to the connection area.
I guess my concern is that, or maybe it's a suggestion, there ought to be a way that the county communicates with you with this problem area so that we can anticipate future issues that come before us and maybe find an ultimate solution, because you have so many that are failing, instead of just doing it one at a time. But it seems to me, since the county's doing their inspection, and it may have been triggered, I see they had a private company look at it, and maybe they're required to report to the county, I don't know, but...
They are required.
They are required?
Yeah, they are required.
So
But I don't know what triggers, I don't know if you have to have a yearly inspection. No, it should go, you have one, I believe, don't you?
Yeah, as a general rule, if you have a septic, you should have it inspected, but we don't have a way to track that and enforce that. But when you do have it serviced, you have to report, or the people who come out and pump have to report. In addition, if you want to make a change, expand your house, then I think that engages public health, and in a special problems area, you may not be allowed to expand your home.
Unless you replace the septic system.
Right.
Okay. That was my questions. Thank you.
Mr. Dillon?
Just a housekeeping matter, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. The revised resolution was to set it up for the signature by the chair for the commission, as opposed to by the chair for one of those agreements that did not go to the full commission. But in the recommendations on page 3 of the staff report onto page 4, there are 3 conditions I recommend be added to the resolution. And I just checked with the landowner, and he has no objection to this. And he understands that these are conditions. So you see condition C, wastewater service will be limited to approximately 0.93 acre site located at 2401 Janin Way in Solvang. D is the landowner shall execute and record an agreement approved by the executive officer.
We talked about.
And this gets to Mr. Stark's question, that consents to any future annexation of the territory which shall inure to and bind all successors in interest to the property. And E, said out of agency service agreement is for sewer service only and shall remain in effect until such time as an annexation to the San Ynez Community Services District is approved by the commission and becomes final. So I'd recommend those be dropped into the resolution. Under paragraph 2, they become, you have A, B, and C already existing conditions. I'd make these D, E, and F.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Commissioner Aceves?
I'll make a motion unless there's questions from Santa Maria.
Santa Maria, any questions? Oh, yeah.
I think we're good over here.
Okay, Commissioner Freeman?
So I have a question, which is maybe in some sense a continuation of the comment that was made by Commissioner Aceves. I was at the meeting of the San Ynez Community Service District last month, before the meeting that you had with the city manager and of Solvang and et cetera. And one of the things that was coming up is the idea of that Solvang was not necessarily prepared to, and this might not, and by the way, if this is somehow not on topic for this thing, please poke me, but that Solvang was potentially not prepared to drop the area from their sphere of influence until such time as there was public outreach and comments from the Jen Way area. Is that something where, you were mentioning earlier the potential of a sphere of influence transfer that would happen at some point. Is actually needed? Is it not possible for something to be in the sphere of influence for sewer of the San Ynez Community Service District and then still potentially be annexed into Solvang and get other city services from Solvang? I was just confused by that, and I haven't had a chance to ask anyone else about this yet.
Yeah, it's an interesting comment because the discussion was basically about changing the sphere of influence from the city of Solvang to the San Ynez CSD. And, as the special district representatives know, it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility to have the area served by a sanitary district, a water district, and still be in the city limits. It happens, in Goleta and some other areas, and Carpinteria particularly. Those are the two that come to mind. But the ideal situation would be that the San Ynez CSD would assume the sphere of influence from the city of Solvang. And this area, for one, is pretty much developed, according to the land use potential, about 1 acre, 0.93 acres. There's about 70 parcels that I don't think there's any vacant parcels. I could be wrong. The Tate annexation was one example that was vacant. Maybe there's a few. So, they would get their land use permits from the county, even if they were in the San Ynez CSD's sphere of influence, because it's unincorporated. Unless there's some reason that they need to be in the city of Solvang. Some people like to write Solvang on their address book or return because it's an area that people associate with. That's kind of it's not quantifiable, but there could be some problem with wanting to be detached from the sphere of influence. But from a practical standpoint, I don't see any particular issues with that. As long as everybody seems to agree, the property owners agree, and they can connect to the the wastewater collection, sewer collection system, I think they'd be pretty happy to be able to do that, not go through LAFCO every time they need to annex one parcel at a time.
Okay, very good. We have a motion on the table. Is that?
Do we have any speaker slips on this?
Chair Levanino and members of the commission, I just had one slip from the property owner, and I believe it was only if
I think
there were any
here
questions.
for questions only, right? Okay, very good. All right.
And, Mr. Chair, I'd move the staff recommendation with the amendments made by our council.
I'll second it.
Moved, seconded by Commissioner Guyer. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Aceves?
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman?
Aye.
Commissioner Guyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman? Commissioner Stark?
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield?
Aye.
Chair Levanino?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimous.
All righty. Now you get to go pay for a hookup. Right. Awesome. You won. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Let's move to business item number 1.
Chair Levanino and members of the commission, business item number 1 is the selection of voting delegates for the Cal-LAFCO business meeting to be held at the Cal-LAFCO annual conference.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Paul Hood, LAFCO Executive Officer again. It's necessary that your commission determine and delegate a voting delegate and an alternate member for the Cal-LAFCO business meeting that's coming up at the conference end of October, thereabouts. And so whoever you delegate would be allowed to vote on behalf of the coastal area, coastal region, which we, as Santa Barbara County, are party to in Cal-LAFCO. So I'd recommend that you select a voting delegate and an alternate for the Cal-LAFCO business meeting in October in Sacramento.
Commissioner Hartman?
2 questions. Who's going, and does it have to be a commissioner?
Yes, it needs to be a commissioner, and we have, actually, we have 8 people attending the conference. It's only, I think, 3 people that, including our chairman, who will not be attending the Cal-LAFCO conference in Sacramento in October. Who else? I forget, but I think most of the people up at the table and in Santa Maria.
All right, who wants to do it?
Edda's not going. Let's see. and
I'm not attending,
I
right.
think Holly's
I am
not
not
going.
attending.
And who else? I think everyone.
Who is?
I think that's it.
It's like there's only me and now everybody else.
May I make a
And Joe's not going. Sorry.
May I make a suggestion,
Sure.
Mr. Chair? If
Absolutely.
And Dawson's going.
the chair is not going and the vice chair is going, would it not make logical sense for the vice chair to be the designated
Sure. If
spokesperson?
he did not push his chair backwards, so that indicates a move forward.
Take one step forward.
Would you? Okay, perfect. I think do we only need 1 delegate?
2.
Two.
We need an alternate in case.
And
Craig
who will be
doesn't make
who else is going that would like to be the alternate? Anybody?
it. Roger.
Roger? All right. So we have a motion on the floor. Well, I'll make the motion that Craig Geyer be our voting delegate and that Roger Sevas be our alternate.
I will second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Freeman. I think that was actually your motion, but it's all right. I stole it. And suggestion. All right. Let's have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Seves.
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman.
Aye.
Commissioner Geyer.
Aye.
Commissioner Hartman.
Aye.
Commissioner Stark.
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield.
Aye.
Chair Levanino.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimous.
Very good. All right. Business item number 2.
Chair Levanino and members of the commission, business item number 2 is to receive and file a report on the proposed new Cal-LAFCO dues structure and provide direction to voting delegates.
Mr. Hood.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we did receive an email from Pamela Miller, who is the Cal-LAFCO Executive Director, informing us that there is a proposed change to the Cal-LAFCO dues structure. I was going to wait until the commission meeting to distribute this, but I thought it would be good to send it out in advance so you had time to take a look at it. I know that there's at least one commissioner that's very interested in this process and will actually be attending the meeting and voting on the issue at the business meeting. But Cal-LAFCO has not, and I'm not trying to put words in their mouth, because they did say that they have not had a structural change to the formula for Cal-LAFCO dues for, I think, 15 or 16 years. So they had several subcommittees that were made up of the Cal-LAFCO chairman and representatives from each of the 4 areas, the regions. And they came up with what on the surface seems to be a fairly complex issue as far as delegating separating the dues between the member LAFCOs. So the reason for this is that Cal-LAFCO has had a structural deficit for the past 3, 4, 5 years as far as being able to break even on their budget. And they are now at a position where they have about a $37,000 deficit. And so they need to make some changes to be self-supporting. They get most of their revenues from Cal-LAFCO member agency, member LAFCOs, but they also try and make up some of the deficit from the Cal-LAFCO conference, where the Cal-LAFCO bylaws say that they can only make a profit, if you will, of about 15%. The Cal-LAFCO University and the staff workshops break even or operating at a loss. So it's necessary that they come back to us and LAFCOs at the business meeting to change the formula. This is not changing the Cal-LAFCO budget, but just the formula that they use to allocate the dues structure to the member agencies. And we have 58 LAFCOs. We have every LAFCO in the state that's participating in this. And just bear in mind that the Cal-LAFCO budget is about $300,000 per year. You know, and our budget is $385,000, and this is, financed by all 58 LAFCOs. And there is a kind of a cap on the population estimate for the LAFCOs, because LA County has 10 million people. We in Santa Barbara County have 460,000, and Modoc County has 9,000 people. So if we were to allocate based on population, we wouldn't pay anything. We'd probably end up paying LA LAFCO money because they would finance everything that Cal LAFCO needs to become self-sufficient. So the formula is based on population. There's a base of 1,000, for everybody pays the same 1,000 in per capita dues. And then the base plus per capita comes out with a percentage, and that's how they calculate. Our, increase would be about $4,000 a year. We currently pay about $4,500 in dues annually, and some LAFCOs, pay a little more than that. But in my opinion, if you're asking my opinion as your executive officer, I think it's a reasonable request, and I would recommend that you support this. And we'll see what happens at the business meeting in October.
A question about the population threshold. So has that always been there, or is that the new part of the new? Because it seems to me like the middle class, the mid counties are the ones kind of picking up the biggest chunk of this. I mean, the big guys are maxed out, and the little guys don't have enough population, and the mid counties are the ones bearing the brunt of it. I mean, I think it's reasonable, but it just seems like we kind of lost out on the.
As I recall, that the counties have been based on urban, suburban, and rural in the past, and this kind of does away with that. It bases it more on population. Some of the small LAFCOs, based on population in the rural counties, don't pay very much.
Right.
They also don't use Cal LAFCO services very much.
Right. But the big guys, the Oranges and the LAs, they get maxed out at 700,000, so they're paying just a fraction more than we are, and we are, a fraction of their size. But anyway, are there any questions?
Yeah, LA, for instance, just to follow up on your point, would pay, $10,662, and Santa Barbara County would pay $7,355.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's
$3,000 difference, and they got another 9.5 million people than we do. But we'll start here.
Yeah, I have a question. The question is, are we obligated to take a position on this, or do we have the discretion either to leave this up to our voting delegate or to take a position one way or the other?
Commissioner Geyer?
Well, I would say that we are obligated because it's a bylaws change for Cal LAFCO, right? Yeah.
So we need to say yes or no one way or the other.
And my question was not that I'm opposed to it. Everybody's got to chip in, and I don't think this is an unreasonable request. It just, like most things, it seems like the big counties came up with the rules somehow here, and it works out well for them. So, Commissioner Seves?
Yeah, we're kind of squeezed right in the middle of it. The only question I have is, if this passes at the conference, when does it take effect?
2021 fiscal year.
2021.
Next year.
So
we've already paid our dues for this current fiscal year.
Okay, so we'd have to adjust our budget for.
Right, we'll add 4,000 for dues.
But as we do a new budget, it would include the new increase should that pass.
Yes.
Okay.
Any questions? Oh, Commissioner Geyer, then we'll go to Santa Maria.
Yeah, I've had some extensive emails, back and forth conversations with Pamela Miller about this, and, on the surface, we're not talking about a big budget.
Right.
And for that, I came up with, it just seems like it's terribly complicated for such a small budget. I mean, and so we've had some discussions about that, and she's been very patient with my questions. So I definitely have been working with it.
I'm very curious where they came up with the per capita rate of 0.13802,199. Like you said, instead, it's very complicated. Yes. Santa Maria, any questions, comments?
Chair Lavigno, I've got one. Commissioner Lavigno?
Yes.
I need some help. I'm looking at the total per capita rate, which changes a lot. And then I multiply it times the population for dues calculation, and the per capita dues don't match. What am I doing wrong?
Mr. Hood, do you want to explain how they come up with 7355 or whatever?
7355, because there's a base dues of 1,000 for each LAFCO, and then the population base plus the population dues is how they calculate the rate. But they
Right.
also,
So you take that 460,444, and what do you multiply it by? 460, 440.
you multiply it by
Oops.
the,
160?
yeah. And that's how they come up with the dues, .0160. So, the rates aren't the same because there's, we, as Santa Barbara LAFCO, have 460,444 population. And still, for some of the larger counties, they are above that by, 700,000. And there's, Contra Costa is 700,000. So the larger counties are capped at the population rate. So there is no, and you have to read the transmittal memo to know what the total is. They should have, Cal LAFCO probably should have put the total amount that would be generated by the base plus the per capita dues to come up with a budget. But they don't know what the budget's going to be for the 2021, but they could have made an estimate if it was 300,000 or 320,000 or whatever the cost of living adjustment would be. And so that's how they came up with it. It's pretty hard to back into it, though. You're right.
So one more.
Yes.
I just need clarification. So right now, we're multiplying our population for dues calculation with the .013802199, not the .0160, correct?
I think Commissioner Freeman has figured out the math.
Yeah, so if you take the base plus per capita dues, which was 7,355, and you divide that by the population for dues calculation, 460,444, that gets you .01597,371. So that total per capita rate is including the base amount per capita, in addition to whatever the per capita due was for the population.
Thank you very much.
All right. I think what you said, Commissioner Geyer, is very true. It's way over confusing. Maybe if they spent less time figuring this out, the budget would be down. All right. So can I get a motion to give direction? Well, I guess the motion is to, what's our action? To, well, this is just to receive and file a report.
Yeah, there was actually, the recommendation is to provide direction to the
Okay.
voting delegate.
Okay, so you're going to be voting on this. All right, so.
Do you imagine that this will be the only proposal, or would they modify it, and do we need to give some discretion to our representative?
I think there's probably, because they've gone through so many iterations on this, and they've had, they had 10 or 12 different formulas that they use, that this is the one that they will propose at the business meeting. I would find it unlikely they'd come up with something else. I think that's the reason it got so complicated, because they had so many discussions on it. But this is the board of directors of the Cal LAFCO organization that's made up of coastal 4 different areas, regions. So I think it's unlikely that it would change.
Commissioner Stark?
Yeah, I was simply going to add, would it not seem that if the proposal gets tweaked on the floor, that our delegate has the discretion to consider the appropriateness of said tweak? That would seem logical, so we can deal with it.
Okay, I think we all trust Commissioner Geyer to do the right thing. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call. The official motion was to receive and file a report, and we provided direction to our voting delegate.
Commissioner Seves?
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman?
Aye.
Commissioner Guyer? Commissioner Hartman? Commissioner Stark? Commissioner Waterfield?
Aye.
Chair Lavanino?
Aye.
Motion passes 6-1 with one abstention.
Okay, let's move to item 3, business item.
Chair Lavanino and members of the commission, business item number 3 is to receive and file a report on nominations for the Cal LAFCO Achievement Award and consider nominations.
Mr. Chairman, every year we get requests from Cal LAFCO. We receive a request from Cal LAFCO for nominations, not only for the Cal LAFCO Board of Directors, but also for Achievement Awards. And there are many categories, outstanding Cal LAFCO member, most effective commission, outstanding commissioner, outstanding LAFCO professional, outstanding LAFCO clerk, outstanding Cal LAFCO associate member, project of the year, distinguished service award, governmental leadership, legislator of the year, Mike Gotch Courage and Innovation Award, and Lifetime Achievement Award. So there's several areas that you can look at.
Well, wait a
if you're
second.
so
I
inclined.
think you glossed over something.
What?
Aren't you the 2009 winner of the Mike Gotch Courage and Innovation in Local Government Leadership?
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah, I was
well.
the first recipient of the Mike Gotch Award.
Congratulations.
In 2009.
Hood, yes.
There's also an outstanding LAFCO professional, which you probably didn't see in 2002, and that was me as well, but not to dwell on those issues.
Yeah, my mentioning it was in good taste. You bringing up 2 wins.
Yeah.
It's pushing the envelope.
So there are a number of areas if you're interested, and I just throw that out to the commission. I don't have any recommendations. So if you decide that you want to nominate some achievement awards, I will follow through and prepare the necessary documents for submittal to the Cal LAFCO organization.
Okay. Does anybody have any input, questions, comments? Is there any public comment on this?
Chair Lavanino, members of the commission, we have no requests to speak.
Okay. Anybody have anything that anybody they'd like to nominate or specific project for discussion? Okay. I guess we received the report on nominations. And I don't believe we're going to nominate anybody, but do we still need a motion to receive and file? Okay. Need a motion to receive and file the report?
I'll move to receive and file.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Seves?
Aye.
Commissioner Freeman?
Aye.
Commissioner Guyer? Commissioner Hartman?
Aye.
Commissioner Stark?
Aye.
Commissioner Waterfield?
Aye.
Chair Lavanino?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimous.
Okay. That takes us to information item number 1.
Chair Lavanino, members of the commission, informational item number 1 is to receive and file a report on the special district commissioner election.
Mr.
Mr.
Hood.
Chairman, I think you already know the results of the election, but there was a 60-day voting period where there was a runoff between the 2 candidates that received the highest number of votes for the regular special district member. Cynthia Allen was appointed or elected to the alternate position, sat in it last month because this process was still going on. But there were a total of 32 eligible independent special districts that filed ballots before the deadline on August 5th. And the results, and I sent you the ballot and the results basically of the 2 candidates, Jay Freeman from the Isla Vista Community Services District and Judith Ishkanian from Montecito Fire Protection District. Jay Freeman received 18 votes. Judith Ishkanian received 14 votes. And so out of 32, Jay received the majority of the votes. And we had, I think, a very good turnout, 32 independent districts out of 38 districts that participated in the election. And it was kind of a long, drawn-out process. But I think the end result, was that the special districts became more knowledgeable, thanks to the 2 candidates. Particularly Jay was out attending a lot of the independent special district meetings, informing people about the commission's activities and what LAFCO is, and making it pretty apparent that to be an active special district, particularly with members on LAFCO, that the special districts need to be involved and educated about what LAFCO does and how the commission is made up. And so I think it was a very good process, and happy to report the outcome.
All right, Commissioner Seves.
Mr. Hood, I'm glad we had the 32 show up, but it was like pulling teeth. And it took way too long.
They mailed in the ballots. They didn't show up.
Pardon me?
They mailed in
Oh,
the
they mailed in
ballots.
the ballots.
Yeah.
But the whole process took way too long because we weren't getting participation. Do we have any ideas how to change the process should there become a vacancy in the future so that we don't go so long with a vacancy?
I'll let Commissioner Guyer, we've had some discussion about this. And I'll just start out if that's okay. We've called, as the executive officer, I'm required to, if there's a vacancy, to call a meeting of the Special District Selection Committee. And the problem in the past is that the last 2 times that I've done that, we have not had a quorum. So that means that we call the Special District Selection Committee, and we don't have a quorum to cast any votes.
Commissioner Guyer.
Well, and then what complicated it somewhat is the selection committee bylaws called out something different, and then going into the runoff. But I really feel at the end of the day, there's, thanks to Jay too, there's a pretty good education that went on with special districts. And there always seemed to be a lot of confusion over the Special Districts Association and the selection committee itself. And I think at the end of the day, people are a little more informed. So hopefully next May or March, when we have another election coming up, it won't be a 5-month process.
Okay, I just bring it up to kind of think or put in the back of our heads as far as how we're going to handle the next one, and make sure that maybe we'll send Jay out there and with the ballots in hand. I don't know.
I think the thing that complicates it is that it's called out in the act that how you do it. And so you actually have an election rather than being appointed like the other commissioners are. So it's complicated.
Now, the selection committee is made up of
All the special districts.
an individual from each one, or did just all of the districts in
The
general?
presiding officer
The presiding officer?
of each independent special district,
Okay. So basically, the chairman of whatever board that is?
or their designee.
And does that have to be a physical meeting, or can it be a mailed ballot to the presiding officer?
In
That's
the
what we
past,
did.
we've always had a physical meeting.
Pardon me?
And it has been difficult to get a quorum. And in this particular case, some of the stuff that came up was, we found districts that don't have a website. You try to figure out who's the presiding officer. I mean, it got very complicated.
Okay.
Commissioner Hartman.
So there's 38 special districts. They have a special districts association that meets monthly, I think. Is that still the case, or every other month? Or?
Well, but that's a separate issue of itself. The California Special Districts Association chapter here is not the selection committee.
I see.
So-
So they don't meet at the same or prior, the selection committee doesn't meet in conjunction with?
Now, the selection committee only meets when you have an election.
Now, we have tried to not combine the meetings, but at least hold them in the same location and on the same day. And Jacqueline knows this. So if the special district selection committee meets at 5 o'clock and there is a special CSDA local chapter meeting at 6 o'clock with a dinner or something, we have tried on a couple of occasions to hold it in the same location but at a different time. And then that adds to the confusion because people don't show up until the 6 o'clock dinner meeting thinking that they could also vote for the special district representative. And, we would continue the meeting until this, after the 6 o'clock time period, but it ends up that we, would be there for like an hour and a half and still not have a quorum. People, and I'm not being critical, believe me, because I think they, have, the best of intentions. but sometimes they don't, they leave early. If the people show up at 5 o'clock, by 5:30, they're, if there's a, I don't know, I'm not going to say anything, but if there's something else they'd rather be doing, they would leave, and then that doesn't, have a, mean that they would stay around for the vote. So it gets kind of complicated.
It gets a little more complicated too, because every special district counts in the selection committee. But then you have special districts like Santa Rita Hills, they count for a quorum, but they have no board. So it does get
Well,
complicated.
we're just thankful you actually held a vote, and we have a representative, so thank you. Yeah. Commissioner Freeman?
Yeah, one of the complexities also, right, is that there are districts that are hours away from the CSDA meetings. And so you end up with this a combination of selection biases when we have the meetings that are in person, particularly when combined at the location of the CSDA meetings. It causes an additional confusion that hasn't been mentioned yet of been hinted at, but that people just believe that it's the CSDA that does get to make the decision. It was one of the hard things was just making certain that everyone understood that they were able to be involved in LAFCO, that LAFCO did apply to them, and that LAFCO cared enough to get their vote. And that was something that I would say that I think the mail-in ballot process worked really well for, but I know that's not exactly how the bylaws have been written for the selection committee. So like if I were to suggest anything to anyone who's it's not LAFCO or the selection committee that would make what happened in this last election faster, is to use a ranked choice voting scheme instead of a runoff election, so that way with a single ballot push, instead of waiting an additional 3 months for the runoff election, you could kind of handle it the first place. But
Commissioner Stark?
I was going to inquire, ranked choice voting schemes, they're fine. What kind of bylaws amendment, or I'm assuming this isn't baked into Knox Cortese, although if it's not, some sort of legislative action would be necessary to implement it, and I don't think it's us.
Yeah.
Is it?
Well, there's a
Mr. Dillon.
default in the statute that you don't need a plurality. I'm going to screw up my terms here, but and it says unless otherwise provided, you can have a minority candidate be elected, provided they got the most votes. But it says unless otherwise provided, and in our case, the Special District Selection Committee adopted some pretty comprehensive bylaws in 2010. They did a very good job on those. They brought in a good council, and so they specifically say you need a majority of a quorum to be elected. So it's pretty clear.
So in order to implement Commissioner Freeman's suggestion, it would be the selection committee, not the CSDA, but the selection committee would have to amend its bylaws. Is that right?
Yes, and the easiest way to do that would be on the next election, when you send out the ballot, send out a bylaw change with it.
Mr. Dillon?
There's authority in the statute to do an election by vote, by mailed ballot. You might need to talk to your own council about whether or not you can send out a bylaw amendment and have a vote on an amendment to your bylaws without having a meeting, but maybe you could. I have no idea. But that's not, somebody just made the comment in my ear. That's not really something LAFCO would engineer. LAFCO, the executive officer per the statute, runs the election for the board member, but when it comes to amending your bylaws, that's not covered by the statute or necessarily involves LAFCO.
Very good. And I thought it was very interesting and refreshing that the results by each one were published, so you know who voted for you and where you have work to do. All right, awesome. All right, so let's move on to item number 2.
Chair Levanino and members of the commission, informational item number 2 is to receive and file a report on the 2019 Cal LAFCO Annual Conference.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, this is fairly self-explanatory. I mentioned that we have 8 representatives, 2 staff, and 6 commissioners attending the Cal LAFCO conference in Sacramento at the Hyatt Regency. And there's a summary of the conference announcement, and there is a draft program that you can look at and take a look and decide which sessions the commissioners and staff will attend, based on how the interest is on each of the sessions. There is a mobile workshop that several of us will be attending on Wednesday morning. There's some stress testing for LAFCOs and local agencies in changing times. And of course, there's the LAFCO 101, which is very popular for the newer commissioners. Then, regional caucus, there's the business meeting, there's a legislative commission report from the state legislature, and there's some breakout sessions on water, legislative menu, how to be, rather than how to plan for legislative menu rather than be on the menu, and solving difficult service issues and creative and innovative solutions to those. MSRs, the process, how do you get through them, and challenges, facing the housing problem in the state, and crafting and communicating compelling LAFCO narrative. There's been some discussion about selling the commission's, what the commission does, and making everybody knowledgeable about that. So it looks like we can, look forward to an interesting program. And there's some breakout sessions that if we don't attend one, that someone else will be able to report back at the following meeting, following the LAFCO meeting, following the conference. I don't have anything else to really report.
Okay. Any public comment on this item?
Chair Lavanino, members of the commission, we have no requests to speak.
Any comments, questions from board members? Santa Maria, all good?
We're all good over here.
Okay, let's get a motion to receive and file report on the Cal-LAFCO conference. We don't need one.
Information only.
Info only. Okay, let's go to item 3.
Chair Lavanino and members of the commission, informational item number 3 is to receive and file a report on the protest hearing for the formation of the San Antonio Basin Water District.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your commission will recall that on the July 11th meeting, the commission approved the formation of the San Antonio Basin Water District, a district of about 87,000 acres, one of the larger districts in the Santa Barbara County. And as a result of that, the second step is to hold a protest hearing. So we did send out protest forms to about 740 landowners, I think, Jacqueline, and forms and notices and the requirements to file protests. We also, for some reason that I'm not really clear on, Bill and I have talked about this, the protest forms also need to be mailed out to every landowner within 300 feet of the boundary of the district, although they cannot file a protest. They get notices anyway, so it's very confusing. So we did hold the protest hearing after publishing in the Santa Maria Times and the Santa Barbara News Press last Friday. And it was August 30th. We assembled at 4 p.m. at the Los Alamos Community Services District office in Los Alamos. And we were there early enough to let in the overflow crowd, which ended up being, I don't think anybody showed up except the representative of the district that let us into the office, and the proponent and the assistant proponent. So we waited to receive protests until, after the deadline, which is at 4:30, and then we left. And protests were filed. According to Jacqueline, we have 11 protests that were filed out of the 740 landowners, and I still need to validate those protests. Although unless they own large acreage, it's based on land acreage, it doesn't seem like the protest is going to have any effect on the formation. And we'll be bringing that back to the commission in October, and the commission will, based on the value of protests, ask the Board of Supervisors to instruct the county elections office to conduct a landowner election. And we will come back with the impartial analysis and the ballot argument for that election in October. And then the county elections will conduct the election and come back with the results at some point. We do have a slight conflict with the county, with the primary election in March. So it could be right around the same time, but we're hoping we can at least get the ballots, the mail ballots out before the primary ballots go out. happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Stark?
I was just going to, am I correct that the voting power of the voters is calculated both by the number of people and by the amount of their acreage? Is that
It's actually based on acreage.
based on acreage?
Yeah.
So
So
you-
you could have some large landowners that, well, we had over 63% of the landowners that filed the application. So it's unlikely that you would get an over 50% land area protest, but, stranger things have happened, I guess.
Commissioner Seves?
Who's funding this?
It's a nonprofit group. I think it's the Friends of San Antonio Basin Water Agency. And we had the president of that group at our protest hearing last week, but they're paying for it. And they've also paid for the costs of publication and the mailing costs. I think we probably have a check by now. And they're funding anything. And of course, it's going to be a Prop 218 election to actually fund the sustainability, groundwater management plan, sustainability, the SIGMA process, and they're required to do this to determine and maintain the adequacy of the water supply. And it's a medium overdraft situation. It's not an extensive overdraft as was in Kiama. We had a much more difficult situation, but it's being funded by the proponents.
Are we using the new accounting system as far as?
Using the what?
The new accounting system as far as giving this like a project code so it doesn't get, put us in a situation of having to pay for stuff that wasn't paid for?
We haven't been, our billing has been fairly reasonable as far as the assessor costs. They've absorbed much of the cost of this one as compared to the Kiama Basin District where we had a bill for $70,000 or something. So it's been, it's been less than, $10,000, $7,000, but they will be billed for that as well.
Okay. Anything from Santa Maria? Very good.
We're good.
Okay. Let's move on then. Commissioner announcements. Anybody have anything? Great.
We're good over here.
Okay. Let's move on to our executive director's comments.
Okay, I was going to talk about the Janet Acres, but we covered that. I attended a meeting about a week ago, a little over a week, at the Montecito Water District to brief them, prepared a PowerPoint on how to form a community services district. And they asked for some of the ways to do that. They are not necessarily going to be the proponent of that, but I mentioned to them that they could initiate the process following a comprehensive fiscal analysis and plan for services to do a reorganization that would dissolve some of the districts in Montecito, basically the water district, the sanitary district, and the fire district. So they were very interested in the process. And basically it was a procedural meeting. I was invited to make a 15-minute presentation, PowerPoint, and about 10, 15 minutes of questions. An hour and a half later, they moved past the questions. And I'll be doing the same kind of presentation at the sanitary district next month, or later this month, probably I think it's next week actually. Fire district is less interested, but they would also be interested in looking at a consolidation. Consolidation is different than a reorganization because a consolidation, you would have one agency that would continue and take over the services of the other agencies, assuming they have the ability to do that. So that's my report from Montecito. And there's also some discussion about libraries as well.
Okay. Commissioner Williams?
I think I was the one who probably inserted libraries into that discussion, just that if some kind of consolidation takes place, and I haven't concluded whether or not there should be one. I'm trying to look at all the factors. But if there was a consolidation that does take place, my hope would be that the county would get a partner on libraries, that the district would include libraries as part of their function if they were at multiple disciplines already within the district. Because as we talked about in other capacities before, the libraries that exist in the unincorporated areas have a sort of strange disadvantage because the county usually partners with a city to fund a given library. Well, that means that in the case of libraries in unincorporated areas, we don't have anyone to partner with, and that ends up meaning usually that libraries in unincorporated areas either get less funding or the county has to change its funding formula so that we fund unincorporated libraries more than ones in incorporated areas, which is kind of, either one of those is a no-win situation for the county and arguably for the people that patronize libraries. I also wanted to just, I belatedly thought of one good announcement to throw in there, which is that the county is organizing a vigil for the Conception boat tragedy this Friday from 6:30 to 7:30 at Chase Palm Park. Thanks to the city for allowing us to use the facility and for partnering with us in this regard.
Okay. Anything else? Very good. Well, we will adjourn, and October 3rd in Santa Maria will be our next meeting.
Thank you.